I just want to do God's will.
The kind of revolution that the world needs is a Christian revolution.
If you want a miracle, you've got to expect it to happen.
You are the recipients of God's grace and God's blessings, and you rejoice in that reality.
Welcome to Life Today Live. I'm Randy Robinson. If you're familiar with Life Outreach International, you know that we do a lot of work around the world, and we help people who are hungry, who need clean drinking water, who are trapped in sex trafficking. And you know, when we do that work, we don't, anybody that needs help gets the help. We are Christians, but we don't like, are you a Christian? Oh, well, you get food. You know, that doesn't happen. Part of our mission is to help people. I want to introduce you to someone else who has a mission to help people. She is Executive Director of the OneFamily Fund US, and they help trauma victims in some really tough situations in Israel. And if you haven't been living in a cave for the last year and a half, you know that there's a lot of trauma going on in Israel. I mean, we're seeing the attacks here. Any terror attack anywhere, whether it's related to Israel or not, is traumatic and difficult. And so Naomi Nussbaum is here to talk about some of the things that they are doing at the OneFamily Fund to help people in really tough situations. So very informative today. If you want to hit that share button, let somebody else know in this conversation, please do that. Naomi, welcome to Life Today Live. Great to have you on the program.
Thank you so much for having me here. Your music made me want to dance.
Yeah, you know, I like the disco thing. What can I say? I gave people a little bit of an idea of your organization, but give us a little more comprehensive look at exactly what you guys do.
We provide emotional, financial, and legal support for all of Israel's terror victims, regardless of race or religion or age or gender. Anyone affected by terror can avail themselves of our services or will reach out to them. The bulk of our work is to help with emotional trauma. PTSD can take years or decades. It doesn't go away on its own. It takes some real hard work to tackle PTSD, and we're in it for the long haul. We might be the emotional first responders, but we'll stay forever.
Put a little bit of a face on that. In other words, give us an example of something that has happened recently or even in the last years, and what exactly that looked like for you guys.
Okay, so we've been around for more than 24 years. Yeah. We have an orphans division for kids, you know, who lost both parents and maybe even older siblings also to an act of terror. They've grown up within our youth department. They're now young adults. Some of them are married and have their own children. And then October 7th rolls around, and we've been helping, literally helping orphans grow up. They're adults, and then they are able to turn around and open their arms and welcome in, tragically, right, this new batch of orphans that came up on October 7th. Those are we protect those victims the most, right? People want to see them, want to speak to them. We don't want them to be exploited. And we also can't push them through their process too quickly. So we have to support them where they are in the grief, the devastation. We have to protect them as much as we can. But when the time is appropriate, to introduce them to orphans who have been doing this for years and years or decades, that can be the most validating and helpful relationship that one can establish. So we do that for widows, right? Or bereaved parents. Sometimes the pain is just crushing and people don't know how they'll ever move forward from, or why they should live, right? Really, why should they live? If the love of their life or if their child has been murdered, sometimes it's too hard to think about going on. But then introducing them to somebody who was literally in their shoes a few years ago, show that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. You can get through this pain, and I've done it, and I'm going to help you. I'm going to show you how I did it, and you can do it too.
I mean, that's got to be one of the most difficult things. I mean, there's a practical issue of housing and food and water and safety. But, you know, those are the externals. The internal scars, man, I can't even imagine. I mean, are you seeing some success? I know you are, but I mean, it's hard to even fathom how you get through the brutality and the loss, and come through intact. You guys, Jim, you mentioned the people who were orphaned many years ago who are now adults helping other orphans. I don't know. How do you get people through these things?
So we have many prongs of support. It's not a one-pronged job. There has to be many layers of different types of support. So we start off by giving people therapeutic retreats for 3, 4, 5 days with a new cohort of people who are all in the same or very similar situation. So, for example, we said if you live in the south of Israel and you're a newly bereaved parent, right after October 7th, because so many of the people who were murdered were young. If you're a newly bereaved parent, please sign up for our 4-day therapeutic retreat to Cyprus. It's basically free, right? There's like a sign up fee just to make sure that people show up. And then we have groups of 50 parents going every weekend for months and months and months on end. They're with a new cohort of 50 people. They're all strangers, but they've all had a child murdered. So there's something, whether they're a religious Jew or not at all religious or not Jewish altogether, experiencing the devastation of having a child murdered just crosses all lines and brings you together. There's no bigger part of your life than that pain at that moment. So you bring them together for 4 days in a gorgeous setting where, there's yoga and there's hot springs and we're feeding them really healthy meals. And there's a spiritual component and a music component. You bring them together with therapists and they can share, they can open up a little bit, they start to trust you. Then we bring them back to Israel and there's an ongoing support group for this particular cohort of 50 people. So, sorry.
That's all right.
So then there's ongoing support groups. Every other week, they're invited to the support group. There's going to be food, there's going to be therapists, and it's their new friend that they just met on that retreat.
Yeah.
So that's how you get them in. Then they meet these people who become their lifelong friends. And in between therapy sessions, they can call up this new best friend to say, I can't get out of bed today.
Yeah.
Or today was my kid's birthday, and I don't think I'm going to live through this 24-hour period. And they come with each other to the cemetery, and we have coordinators, right? They're like the social worker or the coordinator or the grandmother, the paid best friend is going to show up and make calls to help make sure that these people can get out of bed every day, that they can get up and get dressed and go forward. Many of them cannot return to work right away. We do have financial assistance for this period. And we also have clubs. Right. And anybody that needs a therapist or a psychologist, of course, they're welcome to that. In addition to the support groups and their new friends, they're going to have a coordinator constantly calling them. And then the clubs are, creative writing therapy and psychodrama, yoga, meditation, mindfulness, hydrotherapy. We have deep tissue massage. We have alternative treatments like EMDR and stellate ganglion blocks for really traumatic cases. So between all the different types of therapy that we can offer and this new group of friends who are going through the same thing, and within that group of 50, not only is everyone in the same situation, we always put 1 or 2 couples that did this 5 years ago or 10 years ago, and they've somehow managed to recreate a new life. And that's the light at the end of the tunnel. And when these people come out of the more intense bereavement and grieving and trauma period, when they slowly start to choose life again and find some joy, then we can take them out for fun days. Everybody needs to get out every now and then. And sometimes people are so deep into the grieving that they forget it's okay to be happy for a little while.
Right.
They have to learn how to be resilient and juggle the pain and the trauma and choosing life. So when it's appropriate for the time, we plan a night out or a full day event. Sometimes it's a physical challenge. Sometimes it's a show that they wouldn't ordinarily be able to go to. Some kind of fun and joy.
It's so tough. I just can't imagine. You mentioned something earlier that I think a lot of Americans don't realize. And that is Israel itself. We think of Israel, okay, that's where the Jews live, right? And it's predominantly Jews. But there are Arabs, like you say, most Americans don't know what Druze are.
Right.
There are Christians.
Yes.
And you're talking about bringing people that have been through a common situation of trauma and tragedy and really creating community.
Yes.
And those religious or ethnic barriers don't exist in a community like that. They've been shattered by violence. What when you guys, I don't. What do Americans need to understand? Because and here's kind of where the question is coming from.
Yeah.
There's a lot of junk going on in our own country right now that really irritates me, and it's a lot of it's based on untruths because people don't realize that you can be an Arab and live peacefully in Israel. You can be a Christian and live peacefully in Israel,
Yes.
and yet it's painted as this country that is oftentimes intolerant and just out to hurt people and cause Arabs to suffer. It's just not true. What do you see when you go out and you're helping people and as one family's fund is going into situations where you don't ask what do you believe? How did you vote? Where are you from? You just help people. What do you see in that?
There's so much love in Israel that people who haven't been there don't know about.
Mm,
So much love, right? And when you go to the old city, which is the most famous part of the world, probably, right? Because all the religions have their special spots there. People are living in peace. People are praying together in peace. There's roughly 2 million Arabs who have all the freedom of the Western world there in Israel,
yeah,
where they would not have such freedoms back in their own country. Or, I mean, Israel is their own country,
right, right.
right? It's almost a joke now in America that there are, LGBTQ plus, right, supporting Hamas. And they really don't understand on college campuses, they would be the first one to be tortured and murdered.
Hmm.
And it's so sad. But those freedoms are not accepted in the Arab world.
Right.
Women are not allowed to walk around in clothing that they feel comfortable in. They have to be completely covered.
Hmm.
They don't get to go to school. Their property, it's really sad. That doesn't exist in Israel. They're just citizens like anybody else, and you're free to be as religious or as not religious as you would like, and everybody does their own thing. And you see the protests, you see the pride parades in Tel Aviv, you see people choosing their own political party, and everybody can speak their mind and everybody gets along. They're, everybody can do whatever they want. That doesn't exist outside of Israel. Israel is a really peace loving, people loving place. And I don't know if Americans know that. And I also think people, Americans here, oh, Middle East, like that's so far away. I don't even know if they're human, right? But they are just like us, and it's a melting pot, very similar to New York or anywhere else. And it's a very beautiful, loving place.
Yeah, and that is the beauty. I mean, that people that disagree with me can live peacefully with me. I mean, that's what we strive for in America. We're seeing that obviously not take place, but that's what we should all want. And I have the freedom to tell you what I believe from a religious standpoint or a political standpoint, or and without fear of reprisal. And you should have that same freedom too. And that's the one thing. In the Christian world, there are a lot of people that support Israel for religious reasons, and there's some varying views from a religious standpoint, even in the Christian community. And I go, okay, great. If that's your motivation, that's fine. But just from the standpoint that you're talking about, this is a country in the Middle East where there's a lot of intolerance all around it, but that tolerates everybody, their ethnicity, their political views, their social views, their religious views. And I support Israel just on that alone. And you can add all sorts of other things on that. But when I see the protests on the college, it grieves me to see the hatred based on ethnicity, in this case Jewishness, expressed in our own country.
Yeah.
It should never, never, ever be. What does it do? What do you guys think when you see that? I mean, you got to have enough to deal with in Israel, and you see
Right.
stuff taking place here.
Oh God. You know what? On a personal level, not even speaking for one family, just as an American, I'm crushed.
Yeah.
Right? I went to Rutgers here in New Jersey undergrad, and then I went to Teachers College at Columbia University. Both of those universities behaved in an appalling fashion
Yeah.
when it came to those protests.
Yeah.
So I personally feel betrayed,
Mm,
by the colleges and by the education that I got.
mm,
Um, I am glad to see that Jews were pulling their necessary funding, appropriately so. And I hope they continue to take a stance, a very strong stance. I think Trump has been very vocal about the universities cleaning themselves up before he takes office. Um, and you mentioned a couple of minutes ago, like we're Christians and we're Jews. I would say the common thread is that people of faith believe in humanity.
mm,
And anybody supporting terrorists who want to kill people that don't believe what they believe
yeah.
has to take a serious look at their value system,
Yeah.
right? And one family is literally supporting peace. We are helping humans in Israel. We do not differentiate between religious people and non-religious people or what religion you believe in. It's humans who have been affected by terror. Nobody should be affected by terror. Terror should be eradicated,
Right.
and humans and humanity should be honored and encouraged. And with better education, more tolerance, love, and acceptance, we'll have a much more beautiful world than we already do.
Yeah. And I wish that was enough, but sometimes you gotta take a tough stance, and so I understand that as well. But curious how you got into this personally. How did you get connected with One Family?
Oh gosh. So maybe not the story that you're expecting. I mentioned that I went to teachers college. So I got a degree in special education, and I was a teacher for 20 years, helping people in that arena.
Hmm.
And when you learn special education, you learn what, typical development looks like, and then you figure out what atypical development is, because that's everything that isn't typical development. And you come up with a very individualized plan of education for every child's set of circumstances, whether it has a name and a title and it's in a box or they have no idea what it is. Everybody has strengths and weaknesses, basically, right?
Hmm.
And at One Family, that's how we heal PTSD.
Hmm.
That nobody fits into a box. Everybody's going to heal differently. Some people will need stellate ganglion block treatments. Some people will need EMDR. Some people will do just fine with group therapy. Other people will need a psychiatrist. You know, and we want to support whatever each victim needs in order to heal best. So there's a lot of overlapping between special ed and helping people overcome or battle PTSD. We come up with creative programs, and oftentimes they're inspired by a particular victim. Because if one victim can articulate, hey, I think I need this, we're sure that many others also need it, and they haven't been able to say so yet.
Yeah.
So, for example, there was somebody who worked for one family and lost two sons. Her husband stopped singing. He had a beautiful voice and he would sing Saturday in the synagogue. And after he lost his child, he just stopped singing. And she said, I'll bet there are others like you, and the dads should get together and start singing again. And we now have this bereaved fathers choir from all the men, and it's very hard for men to open up and share their feelings sometimes. But when there's a group of them and they're all struggling with the same thing, it makes it that much easier. So they get together, there's food and drinks, and then they tell the story of their child and who their child was that they lost.
Mm.
And then they'll sing that child's favorite song, and they do it all together in a group. And there's nothing more beautiful or healing,
Uh,
right? But whoever would have thought that? Let's start a singing group.
yeah, no, I love it, and um, I hate that is a choir. I wish it was a solo act,
Oh, I know.
or
I
not
know.
at all. But
That
there's,
part's breaking, yeah.
yeah, it's tough. All right, so for people that want to help, if they come to
Yeah.
onefamilyfundus.org, I'll put the URL up
Yes.
there. I know
Yeah.
you guys obviously accept help because you're helping other people, and that's how you do what you do. Um,
Yes.
what will they get involved in when they help you guys financially?
So financial help, we have an Adopt a Family program where they can support a particular family with a $10,000 donation. Uh, and that family will receive monthly checks for a year while they're going through the therapy that they're going through, right? We discussed that some people had the breadwinner murdered in their family and they're in desperate financial times. Many people had their homes burned to the ground, on October 7th, and the government hasn't been able to rebuild yet. So there are so many people displaced. And this financial assistance really can take the edge off and allow people to focus on their trauma. So that's one area. We have rite of passage ceremonies, right? Births, birthdays, bar and bat mitzvahs, weddings. You can support any joyous occasion for a family who's suffering, because sometimes they skip over the happy moments because they're too sad. And this gives them the help or the push that they need to celebrate something when an occasion to celebrate comes up. What else? You could sponsor an art therapy session. You could sponsor, we had an evening of comedy for wounded soldiers, and we coordinated ambulances from 4 different hospitals and rehab centers to bring all these wounded soldiers together so that they could be with each other and have dinner and listen to a comedian and have a reason to laugh, because there's so many reasons to cry. We want to bring love and joy. So if your donors are getting involved at onefamilyfundus.org, these are some of the places that their contribution can go to. I spoke in detail about therapeutic retreats, which we have for orphans, we have for the youth department, we have for widows, bereaved parents. We have 8 or 9 different divisions. We're bringing together people in similar situations, and your contribution can go towards helping any of them, right? And plenty of us are divorced or widows or have special needs children or orphans, or whatever the case may be, not necessarily related to terror, but we have these groups of victims, and maybe somebody feels connected to that particular group that they might otherwise fall in, and that's a beautiful way to establish a connection.
Yeah. All right. I love it. All right. I want to show the website real quick. This is onefamilyfundus.org. And I know my audience, you guys mainly are Christians. I get that. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, they need Jesus, the Prince of Peace. You know what? The Bible also says that they, meaning the world, will know that we are Christians by our love. God puts it on your heart to go out and help an organization that's helping Jewish victims of trauma, tragedy, violence. Don't hold back. Get involved. Show the love. And it works. Like I started out the conversation, we do this all over the world. And in fact, I'll be there very soon in a place where there's a lot of suffering. And you know what? We love everybody. We show that love regardless of whatever. We love showing the love to everybody is godly. So you guys want to get involved, do that. Naomi, is there anything I missed? Anything you want to add before I let you go? I appreciate your time and the work that you do.
No, thank you so much for having me. And I 100% support you in spreading the love. Your listeners, if they so desired, they could support a non-Jewish family. That could be an airport donation as well, that we would be happy to accommodate. We want to support everybody in Israel who's been affected by terror. And the work that you're doing is wonderful. So thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for having me on today.
Absolutely. A Christian family in the United States supporting an Arab family in Israel. Now, that would be a cool thing.
Absolutely. Through a Jewish organization. It's perfect. And you know what our dream is, right? Our dream is to open up our own retreat facility that's funded 1/3 by Christian money, 1/3 by Arab money, and 1/3 by Jewish money, to show true love and brotherhood and as a symbol of peace. And it should be a center where everybody goes to get help and healing and feel loved and supported like family. And it should have nothing to do with religion.
And everything to do with real religion.
Yes,
which is
absolutely. I completely support
I love that. All right. Naomi Nussbaum, One Family Fund. You can check out their website, onefamilyfund.us. And, you can't just pay it lip service. You got to do it. And that may have different expressions, but supporting them, supporting a family that's been through trauma is one. Go do it. Appreciate you guys being here. If you haven't liked, followed, or subscribed, I would invite you to do that. And come back. We've got more for you here on Life Today Live.